A man sits on a 4-inch booster seat. He is one of the wealthiest humans to ever walk the earth. A modern-day Caesar whose empire spans borders, languages, and governments. Yet, in this moment, he looks like a specimen in a glass jar. He reaches for a glass of water. The movement is stiff, mechanical, calculated. The internet erupts instantly. They don't see a CEO under fire. They see a glitch in the matrix. They see a lizard, a robot, an alien wearing a skin suit. This is the paradox of Mark Zuckerberg. He is the architect of the greatest social network in human history, the man who promised to bring the world closer together. Yet, he stands as the loneliest figure in Silicon Valley, detached, cold, and seemingly incapable of the very human connection he monetized. We call him a machine. We mock his uncanny valley stare. But we rarely ask the terrifying question lurking beneath the memes. Did the machine break the man? Or was the man always the machine? Welcome to the autopsy. We aren't here to discuss stock prices or VR headsets. We are here to dismantle the psyche of the man who hacked human behavior. We are going to explore the Dark Triad, the Narcissism, the Machiavellianism, and the Psychopathy that fueled his ascent. We will see how a desire for acceptance mutated into a hunger for dominion. But to understand the robot, you have to look at the moment the human stopped functioning. And it didn't happen in a Senate hearing. It started in a cramped, sweaty dorm room at Harvard, with a jagged line of code and a broken heart. Most supervillain origin stories begin with a tragedy, a dead parent in an alleyway, a war, a starving child in the dirt. But Mark Zuckerberg's story doesn't start in the gutter. It starts in Ardsley, New York, a quiet, upper-middle-class bubble. His father was a dentist, his mother, a psychiatrist. He was the prince of the Hudson Valley, a prodigy who was writing code while other kids were learning to ride bikes. On the surface, it looks perfect, but peel back the skin and you find the first anomaly. Mark wasn't a team player. He didn't play football. He didn't play baseball. He chose fencing. Think about that choice. Fencing is solitary. It is mathematical. You stand on a strip, isolated. You wear a mask that hides your face. You hold a weapon, and the goal isn't to cooperate. The goal is to find the weakness in your opponent's defense and strike. It is a sport of precision, not passion. And this is where we need to make a critical distinction. We love to romanticize passion. We tell children to follow their passion. But passion is hot. Passion is emotional. Passion burns out. Mark wasn't driven by passion. He was driven by obsession. Obsession is cold. It is mechanical. Passion wants to create. Obsession wants to solve. And for young Mark, human connection wasn't a joy. It was a problem, a complex, inefficient system that he couldn't quite navigate. So, if you can't join the system, you build a better one, and you make yourself the god of it. Let's go to the night that proved this. The night the monster first opened its eyes. Kirkland House, Harvard, November 2003. Mark is 19 years old. He's just been rejected, or at least he feels slighted by a girl. A normal teenager punches a wall. Maybe he drinks too much cheap beer and passes out. Mark drinks the beer, but he doesn't pass out. He sits down at his computer. He starts a blog, and in real time, he begins to dismantle the reputation of the girl who hurt him. He calls her a bitch. He mocks her family name. He strips her of her humanity and reduces her to data. But that's not enough. The rage needs a bigger outlet. He opens a terminal. He begins to hack He breaches the digital security of Harvard's dormitory houses, Kirkland, Elliott, Lowell. He isn't looking for money. He is stealing faces. He downloads the ID photos of hundreds of female students, unsuspecting classmates, women who had never met him. He takes their images and uploads them to a site he builds in a fever dream of code, FaceMash. The premise is simple. 2 pictures appear. Who is hotter? You click, you judge, you rank. He took complex, living human beings and flattened them into a binary choice. Hot or not. 1 or 0. It was crude, it was cruel, and it was viral. Within 4 hours, 450 people visited the site. 22,000 photo views. The Harvard servers crashed. The administration was furious. Mark was dragged before a disciplinary board. He was accused of breaching security, violating copyright, and violating individual privacy. He apologized. Of course. He said it was a prank. He said he didn't mean for it to get out of hand. But looking back now, we know that was a lie. FaceMash wasn't a mistake. It was a prototype. It revealed the Dark Triad trait that would define the next decade of his life. Machiavellianism, the ability to manipulate others for personal gain, with a complete detachment from morality. He didn't care about the women he humiliated. He cared that the system worked. He cared that people clicked. He realized that humans are voyeurs. We crave judgment. We crave status. And if he gave us a tool to indulge our worst instincts, we wouldn't just use it. We would get addicted to it. Harvard almost expelled him. They thought they were dealing with a troublemaker. They were wrong. They were dealing with an architect. Mark walked away from the FaceMash scandal with a realization that would change the world. Privacy is a barrier to efficiency. And if you remove privacy, you gain power. While the dust was settling, 2 Olympic rowers, the Winklevoss twins, approached him with an idea for a site called Harvard Connection. They saw a brilliant coder. They saw a quiet, awkward sophomore who could help them build a digital country club. They had no idea who they were letting in the door. They thought they were hiring an employee. In reality, they were feeding a predator. Because Mark had tasted blood with FaceMash, he knew he could build something bigger. He didn't want to connect Harvard. He wanted to own the social graph of the entire world. The seed was planted. The obsession had taken root. And now, it was time to move fast and break everything. Palo Alto, California, the playground of the gods. Mark leaves Harvard behind. He trades the winter coats of the Ivy League for the hoodie and slides of Silicon Valley. But he didn't come west to join the industry. He came to conquer it. By 2005, the Facebook is spreading like a virus. It jumps from campus to campus, consuming attention spans, relationships, and time. And as the user base grows, so does the ego. This is the phase where the awkward coder transforms into the emperor. And, like all young emperors, he needed to make sure everyone knew who held the crown. There is a specific artifact from this era that tells you everything you need to know. It wasn't a line of code. It wasn't a speech. It was a business card. Mark ordered a set of custom business cards to hand out at meetings. They didn't say founder. They didn't say president. They read, in bold font, I'm CEO. Bitch. Let that sink in. That is not the sign of a leader who wants to inspire. That is the growl of an insecure alpha male marking his territory. It is aggressive. It is immature. And it is deeply narcissistic. He was telling the venture capitalists, the elders of the industry, and his own employees, I am not lucky. I am chosen. But narcissism alone doesn't build an empire. You need something sharper. You need the ability to cut off the dead weight, even if that dead weight is your best friend. Enter Eduardo Saverin. Eduardo wasn't just a co-founder. He was Mark's first investor. The guy who put up the money when nobody else would. The guy who bought the servers. The guy who stood by him during the FaceMash fallout. But as the company exploded, Mark decided Eduardo was too slow. He was lagging. He was still on East Coast time, thinking about advertising revenue, while Mark was thinking about world domination. In the mind of a Machiavellian, relationships are transactional. When the transaction stops yielding a high return, you terminate the contract. But Mark didn't just fire him. That would be too messy, too human. Instead, Mark orchestrated a financial assassination. He creates a new company entity. He issues new stock. He tells Eduardo to sign some papers, burying the details in legalese. Eduardo trusts him. Eduardo signs. And with the stroke of a pen, Eduardo's share of the company, his legacy, his future billions, is diluted from over 30% down to less than 1%. It was a bloodless coup, murder by spreadsheet. When Eduardo found out, he froze. He had been erased from the history books of his own creation by the person he trusted most. Mark didn't lose sleep over this. In instant messages, leaked later, his tone was chillingly casual. He described the move not as a betrayal, but as a necessary correction. He optimized the cap table the same way he optimized a database. This is the dark engine of his success. The belief that move fast and break things applies to people. 2. If you are slow, you are broken. If you are broken, you are deleted. Mark proved that he ruled through fear, not loyalty. He established a culture where growth was the only god. But here is the problem with playing God. When you treat people like data points to be manipulated, when you treat friends like disposable lines of code, you start to lose the ability to tell the difference between right and wrong. He had conquered his rivals. He had exiled his co-founder. He was the undisputed king of the social network. But he was about to make a deal with the devil that would cost him his soul. He had learned how to harvest friendship for profit. Now, he was going to learn how to harvest democracy. You can only run so fast before the ground runs out. For a decade, Mark lived by his own mantra: move fast and break things. He broke the taxi industry's model of advertising. He broke the newspaper industry. He broke the way we date, the way we argue, the way we vote. But in 2018, the bill finally came due. It wasn't a market crash. It was a breach of faith. Cambridge Analytica. The news broke that the personal data of 87 million users had been harvested, weaponized, and sold to manipulate a US election. The curtain was pulled back. The world suddenly realized that Facebook wasn't a town square, it was a surveillance state. And where was the king? For 5 agonizing days. Silence. Mark vanished. No statements. No posts. No apologies. Just a radioactive silence that screamed of guilt. Imagine the atmosphere inside the HackerWay headquarters. The glass walls, the free food, the bright colors, all of it suddenly feeling like a facade. Mark sat in his glass aquarium of an office, watching the stock price plummet by billions. But the money didn't matter. What shattered was the illusion of control. He had built a machine to connect the world, but the machine had learned to feed on outrage. And now, the creator had lost the keys. Then came the walk. April 10th, 2018. The Hart Senate office building. Mark trades the gray t-shirt and hoodie his armor of indifference for a dark blue suit. It looks unnatural on him, like a costume. He walks into a room packed with photographers. The shutter sounds are deafening, a wall of noise. He sits down, alone. There is a detail here that is heartbreakingly pathetic. If you look closely, beneath him, on the leather chair, is a 4-inch thick cushion, a booster seat. Here is a man worth $60 billion, the man who knows your secrets, your location, your friends, needing a cushion to look the United States Senate in the eye. He looks small. He looks pale. For hours, he is grilled. He answers with rehearsed lines. "Senator, we run ads." He drinks water with a mechanical stiffness that becomes an instant global meme. The world laughed at him. They called him a robot. But strip away the memes and look at the eyes. That isn't the look of a robot. That is the look of a human being who has completely dissociated. Psychologists call this decompensation. It's what happens when a narcissist's grandiose reality clashes with the cold, hard truth. The shield cracks. In that chair, Mark wasn't a visionary. He was a child who had set the house on fire and was trying to explain that he only wanted to keep everyone warm. The loneliness of that moment is absolute. He had surrounded himself with yes men. He had fired the friends who challenged him. He had optimized his life for efficiency, removing all the messy, emotional friction of real relationships. And now, when the world turned against him, he had no one to stand in front of the bullets. We usually say that rock bottom is where you find your foundation. We say that failure is the teacher that success refuses to be. When you break, you are supposed to look at the pieces and ask, "Who am I?" But Mark didn't ask that. He didn't look inward. He looked at the bad press, the angry users, the terrified investors, and he decided that they were the glitch. Reality was the problem. He didn't resolve to fix his company. He didn't resolve to fix himself. He decided to leave reality behind entirely. If the real world is too messy, too hostile, too difficult to control, why stay in it? The collapse didn't humble him. It radicalized him. He was done with Earth. He was ready to build a new world, a metaverse. Most tragic heroes die at the end of the second act. They are consumed by their hubris. The curtain falls. But Mark Zuckerberg is not a tragic hero. He is a survivor. And survivors don't die. They update. After the humiliation of 2018, after the memes, after the world labeled him a malfunctioning robot, Mark didn't retreat into the shadows. He did something far more terrifying. He went back to the lab, not to fix the code, but to fix the avatar. If the world saw him as weak, as a pale, sweaty nerd in a booster seat, he would rewrite that source code. Enter the era of Zuck 2.0. We watched, bewildered, as the hoodie disappeared. In its place, gold chains, designer t-shirts, long, curly hair. We saw him in the octagon, training with UFC champions. We saw him tearing ACLs and continuing to fight. We saw a man meticulously constructing a new shell, one that was physically formidable, one that was cool. It was the ultimate patch note. Bug fix, removed social awkwardness, added jujitsu. But look closer. This wasn't a man finding himself. This was a man, A.B., testing a new personality. He saw that the world respects strength more than intellect, so he optimized for strength. He saw that the world loves a warrior, so he became a gladiator. It works. The stock price rebounded. The threats of government regulation faded into background noise. He outlasted his rivals. He crushed the Metaverse dissenters by sheer force of capital. But there is one specific moment that captures this resurrection perfectly. It is the most cinematic, surreal, and deeply unsettling moment of his entire career. July 4th, 2021. Picture the scene: a gray, overcast lake. The water is still. Suddenly, a figure glides across the surface. He is riding a $12,000 electric hydrofoil surfboard. He is holding a massive American flag. He isn't smiling. He isn't screaming with joy. He is gliding with perfect, eerie stability. The song "Take Me Home, Country Roads" is playing over the video. It was meant to be patriotic. It was meant to be human. Instead, it looked like a simulation. It looked like an alien trying to communicate. I am one of you. I enjoy water. I enjoy flags. I enjoy country music. It was a triumph of engineering, but a failure of the soul. And that is the tragedy of his comeback. He won. He beat the scandals. He is richer and more powerful than he has ever been. But he seems further away from humanity than ever before. He realized that he couldn't fix the real world. It was too messy, too angry, too broken. So he pivoted his entire empire to Meta. Why fix reality when you can build a new one? A digital heaven where he is the architect, the landlord, and the god. A world where he can't be subpoenaed. A world where the laws of physics don't apply, only the terms of service. So, what is the legacy of Mark Zuckerberg? When the history books are written, they won't talk about a boy who connected the world. That is the fairy tale. They will talk about the man who monetized the human condition. He leaves behind a generation that is more connected, yet more isolated. A generation that measures self-worth in likes and attention. He gave us a megaphone, and we used it to scream at each other. His legacy is not a monument. It is an infrastructure. He became the plumbing of the internet. You might hate the pipes, you might find them ugly, but you cannot live without the water they carry. He achieved the Dark Triad's ultimate goal, immortality. Not the immortality of a saint, loved and revered, but the immortality of a system. He is no longer just a CEO. He is the algorithm. He is the notification on your phone that releases a hit of dopamine. He is the anxiety you feel when you scroll. He is the invisible hand guiding your eyes, your clicks, your thoughts. The boy from the dorm room wanted to be included. He wanted to be part of the cool crowd. He failed at that. He never got to be cool. So, he bought the crowd. He bought the club. He bought the reality we live in. And as he glides across that digital lake, holding his flag, looking into the empty horizon, you have to wonder, is he happy? Or is he just optimized? So, we return to the question we asked at the very beginning. Is Mark Zuckerberg a machine? The answer is no. That would be too simple. Machines are programmed by others. Mark programmed himself. He is the ultimate cautionary tale of what happens when you optimize a human life for one single variable: growth. He won the game of capitalism. He connected 3 billion people. He built an engine of infinite wealth. But in doing so, he became a prisoner of his own creation. He lives in a world of high walls, private security, and curated realities. He owns everything, yet he grasps nothing. We look at his empire and we feel envy. We see the billions and we think that is the definition of success. But look closer at the eyes one last time. True greatness isn't about how many people you can connect to a server. It is about how deeply you can connect to the person sitting right in front of you. Mark spent his life trying to solve the problem of human connection. But connection isn't a problem to be solved. It isn't code to be debugged. It is a messy, inefficient, painful, beautiful chaos that makes us who we are. When you try to optimize the humanity out of the human, you don't get a god. You get a ghost in the machine. Be careful what you sacrifice for your ambition, because if you trade your soul for the world, you might just find that the world is a very lonely place to rule. Now, I turn the question to you. Was the price paid for Facebook worth the cost? Did Mark Zuckerberg save human connection, or did he destroy it? Let me know your verdict in the comments below. If you enjoyed this autopsy of the Dark Triad, you might want to click on this video right here. We dive into the mind of a man who didn't just want to rule the world, but wanted to escape it entirely, Elon Musk. I'll see you there. As Mark once said, the biggest risk is not taking any risk, but perhaps the real risk is forgetting who you are.